Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com, and it's the end of the first week of August 2020, and it's time to do another one of those garden tours brought to you by my sponsor, Vessi Seeds. Almost all the seeds in my garden this year were provided by Vessi Seeds. If you want to help support the channel and the podcast, they sell something you need, buy from them, and then that'll help continue to make this all possible. Use the coupon code GAVS20. The code and all the details are in the description box of this video if you're watching on YouTube. So anyway, with no further ado, let's get started. It's been a very hot summer. The last summer that I recall we had growing conditions like this was 2014. That was the last summer I had zucchini in July, right? Most summers I don't get, my zucchini aren't ready until early August. So I've been harvesting zucchini and pickles for a few weeks now. So it's been a very hot summer. So things have been growing, and thankfully I haven't really needed to do any watering. The mulch and everything just seems to be working as usual. So yeah, I think I used the hose once since the beginning of July. So that's not bad. I'm really gardening on this scale. There's no way I could really, if I had to come out here and spend an hour every morning water this garden, I'd probably pack it in. So thankfully, by having everything mulched, that seems to not be necessary where I am anyway. But yeah, enough talking. Let's go have a look around. Let me show you what's happening in the garden. All right, so here we are at the entrance, and we got our culture beds. We got some garlic, just about ready to be harvested. These squash, Georgia candy roasted squash, growing right up the hill. They're just starting to form, right? There's one in there, right? Just beginning to form. I find the month of August is when I get the most stuff happening when it comes to squashes. These potatoes are getting close, but not ready for harvest yet. There's still a lot of green. I like the plants to be, totally yellow or even lying down really dead. I got a couple sort of dead looking ones there, but they're not completely shot. You notice these potatoes are getting kind of pecked apart. This is mostly snail damage. I don't worry about it at all with potatoes. I don't use any slug bait. I don't use anything where potatoes are concerned. I just let them handle themselves, and the foliage gets a bit of gets worked over a little bit, but generally speaking, I find everything just seems to work out fine, so I leave it alone. That's potatoes anyway. All right, so we're in the garden here, and moving over to this side here. This is some lettuce and spinach that have bolted and they're done. I had potatoes growing here. I've harvested them. Had potatoes there. I harvested them. I was supposed to plant some fall greens here. Didn't get around to it. And now it's a little bit late to plant anything, I think anyway. Once you're sort of near the middle of August, based on my experience where I am, it's just a bit late to get that sort of thing going. It doesn't matter. I'm going to have so many green things growing here in the fall. It doesn't matter anyway. I just won't have lettuce and spinach. That's cool. I'm fine with that. I do have one place over there where I have some lettuce and spinach for a fall green, but we'll see where that goes. This is that bloody dock that I planted, and it's coming in. I mean, this is a perennial, so I'll get more than 1 year out of it. But what a pretty plant. And these are still too densely planted for my liking. Maybe I'll move some of these. I might even use them out front the front yard as an ornamental. An edible ornamental. We got some carrots here. A lot of people were saying they had trouble getting their carrots going. This bed worked out great. I used the carrot seeds. These were pelletized carrot seed. I find pelletized seeds cost more, but man, they work really, really well. These ones were pelletized seeds. I got another bed over there. I had a nice bed of carrots growing, and they all disappeared over the span of a couple days. Don't quite know what took them out, so I had to replant them. But now they're okay, right? So I mean, persistence matters in gardening. Here I got kale and this French sorrel. I honestly planted way too much of this sorrel, so I get a lot of that. And honestly, I think in this is a 4x10 bed, I think, 4x10, 4x12. I think just 2 rows of kale the kale needs space. Where the kale has space, it tends to not get pest damage so much. And where it's jammed in tight to other things, it tends to get picked apart. You can see this kale, right? over here, look how nice the plants look. Look how little pest damage there seems to be. Right? Looks pretty good. But over here, where they're jammed in with the sorrel, look how shot up that leaf is, right? Look how shot up that is, right? Honestly, I think that's slugs and snails. They're always around in my garden, and I don't bother using any sort of slug bait this time of year. When the kale's like an inch or two high, I have to use it, or it'll just be eliminated. Oh, once the kale's about 6 inches high, I don't bother. And I find that, I don't know if it's the birds or other predators in the area, but the snails, I mean, any plant that's got a good amount of space doesn't seem to get attacked too badly. It's when they're not spaced properly and there's places for the, basically if the slug and snail can find shade, they know they're not going to be seen from above, so they tend to go a little bit more on the attack. So yeah, I would say just 2 rows of kale in a 4 foot wide bed is the right, given also when you think about fully mature kale is about 2 feet wide. This one might even be 3 feet wide. It's huge, right? Comparatively, here's a kale that I had growing in this bed was all garlic, but I've pulled the garlic out. Right, there's some onions growing here now, but look how huge this one is. And I guess to speak to the theory a lot of people have that kale planted in with garlic, that the garlic confuses the pests. I don't think the pests were too confused when they were attacking this leaf. I don't think they were too confused when they were attacking that leaf. Right? So, yeah, it's a bit of a myth, I think. There's a certain logic to it. It kind of makes sense, but yeah, I've played around with that approach multiple seasons. I've never found garlic to really confuse pests at all. If you have garlic planted in with your kale and you're not getting pest damage, it's because you don't have a really bad pest problem. That's it. I got some nice Romano beans here. I really like the Romano beans. I mean, there's different kind of, these are a bush bean. I tend to favor bush beans in my garden because I have a short growing season. But the Romano bean, if you grow beans a lot, and I grow a lot of beans, there's a point between the bean being ready to be picked and then it's a bit too big and stringy. That window of time is very wide for the Romano bean, right? Maybe from the point they're ready to be picked to the point where they're too developed, you might have a 4-day window for that. Some beans you only have a 1 or 2 day window for that. So you have to be picking them every single day. You're kind of a slave to it. So I would recommend that style. I've got a yellow type Romano bean and it was a Serpentine, I think the name is. I can't remember the variety. And a green one. They're both really good tasting. But also from a harvesting point of view, you just got a few more. You don't have to be out picking them every single day, every second day, maybe every third day at the most. That's better than every day. Yeah, so for all my troubles with carrots, these carrots are looking great. Right, I'm gonna leave these in the ground right up until November, right? Cucumbers are doing good. Typically I have 2 rows of cucumbers in a bed, and this year I decided to just make 1 row, each cucumber planted about 6 inches apart. And I am totally happy with this. I mean, there's one forming there. That'll be twice that size tomorrow. When you have growing pickling cucumbers, they come in really fast and really hard. And with this size, so this is 10 feet long, 6 inches apart, right? A 10-foot strip of cucumbers. I pick cucumbers every second day, and I'm making cucumbers every second day. Every second day I have to make cucumbers. That's about as busy as I want to be with that, right? And I have to sustain that for about 3 weeks to a month. Now we're going away for a week, going to Prince Edward Island, so the garden's going to be untended for a week, so I'm a bit bothered by that. Not that I'm worried about, things failing or whatever. The garden seems to take care of itself just fine. But just in terms of things getting, too big and being untended. Oh, I didn't even notice this guy. Look at that. Yeah, so there's pickles. Here, a bed over here, I planted peppers under a plastic dome. So these were not transplants. These were direct seeded in the ground right here under a dome. And I had the dome on until some point in July when it was just getting too hot to, I was at risk of cooking them. So in this bed I planted, let me see if I can just get back a little bit. I planted eggplant on this side and peppers on this side. None of the eggplants came in except this one plant. So I don't know why that failed. It's too late, too late to go back now. So I moved the peppers around and gave them some more space. And I had a lot more peppers growing in here, but we had a big kind of windstorm, and a number of the peppers tipped over and broke. So it's a real shame. But for a direct seeded pepper in this climate where I am, where we still have frost in May, yeah, I'm happy. I mean, we've got a 2-foot high pepper plant here. I mean, it's great stuff. So yeah, it's just an experiment, playing around with it. And I know you can get better results starting them indoors and all that sort of stuff, but yeah, these seem to be doing good, so we'll see where that goes. These tomatoes were just, they just came up over there, just came up wild. So I moved them outside of the dome, gave them a trellis. So these are just, volunteer tomatoes that I didn't even have to plant. And they're the biggest tomatoes I've got, believe it or not. They're probably a cherry. I'm like 99.9% certain they're a cherry tomato. As wild tomatoes, if tomatoes just come up on their own, they tend to be cherry anyway. Got some parsnips over here. Got this bed was lettuce and spinach, but I had a bunch of kale just come up wild in a corner of the garden. So I moved it around a bit. And so now it's a kale garden. I've been harvesting the beets and pickling them and eating them. I usually go fishing at least once a week on the weekend. I'm hoping to go later today. And when I'm cooking up fish, I like to cook up sliced beans with the fish, or sliced beets with fish. I don't know why, I just like that. So we either have fish, greens, and beets, and this time of year potatoes. More garlic over there needs to be harvested. I've been harvesting my garlic, so I got about at least half my garlic harvested already. And the next couple days I'll have it all out of the ground. The grapes are going crazy, for sure. Although the birds usually get them all, I just mainly need the leaves for pickling. You have to use grape leaves when you make pickles if you want your pickles to be crunchy. These purple Chieftain potatoes that I planted like the first week of July, very late for planting potatoes, but they look great. And yeah, I think they're going to be, I think I might do a bit more of that in future years, because most of my potatoes, I really don't want to harvest them until my garage is nice and cool for storage. So I kind of want the potatoes flowering middle August and being done by sometime in September, late September. That's when I want the potatoes to be done. So, planting most of them later, I think, is the way to go for that, just from a storage point of view. Okay, over here we got the big zucchini bed. I just picked all my zucchini yesterday, so I don't think there's any to show, just the odd one. That one's about ready to be picked, I guess. But anyway, this is a 3-foot wide by 12-foot long zucchini bed. And if you're wondering how much zucchini you need to plant, if you really, 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 really like zucchini, this is all the zucchini you need to plant. There's probably a dozen plants here. A dozen zucchini plants is all the zucchini you'll ever need, unless you're living off of it. Here we had peas and potatoes. The peas are totally done, and the potatoes are doing great. I love this pairing of peas and potatoes. I've tried beans and potatoes, but the beans are still growing if you're doing the pole beans right up until September. And harvesting the potatoes while the beans are growing, you can mess up the bean root systems and compromise the plants. So it's better to have potatoes that way. When you're harvesting the potatoes, the peas are done anyway. So yeah, I mean, you plant the peas like the first week of April, and then sometime in May you plant the potatoes. So the beans are already up and sort of have some height. Peas. So the peas are able to get their sun, and they're sort of ahead of the potatoes. Works great. It's a great system for getting 2 things out of one garden. This was a garlic bed. Now it's onions, and many of these onions, see, they're all. People have asked me, when do you pick your onions? Well, when they tip over like that, is really, you can still leave them in the ground a bit longer. So this time of year, I just take onions as I need them. I don't really harvest them, right? Maybe in a few more weeks I will. I like to let the tops die a good deal. I mean, they're still green, so they're still kind of growing, but yeah, if I need onions, I come out here, and any one of these that's tipped over, I take those. Here's a garden where I planted corn in the middle and beans around the perimeter, because you can't really access the perimeter. The garden's about 7 feet by 7 feet, and it's worked out great. The corn's 8, maybe even 9 feet high. It's just starting to get fat, right? Still not ready, right? The tassels are still, when these tassels dry out is when they're ready. So they're close, but the corn's still immature. But yeah, it's been a while since I had a decent corn this year in this garden. So certainly for planting soil, or planting the corn in soil that's at grade, seemed to work really, really well. So yeah, I think it's a peaches and cream variety. All right, we're back at the entrance of the garden here, and we're on the left-hand side. We got some winter boar kale going down here in this bed, some parsnips. Up the hill, I got pumpkins growing in the that terraced bed. The plants really aren't doing that great, I have to say. I mean, there's pumpkins and they're forming, but those leaves, the foliage should be twice that. There should be twice that amount, and the leaves should be twice that size. I just don't think it's getting the water it needs, and I have not been watering it. I haven't done anything up there. It's just a pain to get up there. So perhaps the soil needs to improve its ability to hold on to water. You know, the better your soil is, the more it can hold on to water. We've not had a lot of rain. So I probably should have been up there. I mean, so just for contrast's sake, right? There's the foliage of my pumpkins. You can see it's a kind of light green. And then if you look over here at the Georgia candy roaster, you might see it's lower down the hill. Look how dark green that is. Also, look at this hill. As you go up the hill, the foliage, the different weeds and stuff become more and more sparse as you go up the hill, right? Then as you get down the hill, gets greener and greener and greener, because that's where all the water sort of collects, right? So yeah, maybe I'll grow something different there next year. We'll see, but that's just the nature of gardening. You try something, and I mean, you know, you just plug away and keep trying new things. We got some kale over here. Here's a kale that just, this seed just must have been in the sand. It grew up out of the sand pathway, and this kale has been utterly pest-free, right? Because I don't think slugs really travel across this sand. They could probably travel, I mean, slugs travel underground, so they could go underground, under the sand, I guess. But yeah, just goes to show, even though this is sand, there's some really good soil underneath the sand. Otherwise, there's no way that kale would look like that. I got some potatoes along here. Got some blueberries are starting to come in really nice, although I think the birds are getting some of them. I should have put some netting over these. Nice big fat blueberries, but see how there's a bunch missing here? I didn't pick those. So I'm noticing a lot of them have gone missing. So this is the first year I got a really good blueberry harvest, and they all just seem to disappear. So I think a system of netting for next year is in order. It's a bit late this year, and I'm going away for a whole week, so I was looking forward to some serious blueberry pie, but I love blueberry pie, but doesn't look like it's going to happen this year. Yeah, the strawberry plants have gone kind of dormant. People have been asking me about my asparagus. I mean, the asparagus have gotten really big, and they're really, I mean, you know, basically if your asparagus are making these little berries, they're doing good. But I got an incredible weeding problem here. Some serious weeding needs to be done in this bed, and I keep meaning to shoot a video, something like weeding an overwhelmingly weedy bed was the theme of the video, and I haven't gotten around to it. So this bed just gets more and more out of control. I will deal with it at some point. Here's where we got the Partridge Berries that Whiffletree Farms gave me. They're Lingenberries. They're just sort of, you know, getting established. I didn't expect much this year, and I haven't gotten much out of them, but I mean, they're still alive, they're still growing. There's some new growth, right? You can see the dark leaves, that's the old growth, and the sort of lighter color, light green leaves, that's the new growth. So yeah, I mean, they're coming in, and you know, I expect next year will be much more impressive. I jammed some onions in here just because there was so much real estate. People were asking me about my raspberries, because I tried this new pruning technique for these ever-bearing raspberries where you just cut them all down to the ground, which isn't the way you're supposed to prune evergreens, but apparently that's a way to speed up the second yield from the ever-bearings. So yeah, they still have not budded out, so we'll see. They normally aren't budded out by this time of the year, but normally what happens is they make their flowers in September, and by the time they start making raspberries, there's frost and they don't form properly. And so despite having all these raspberry plants, I don't get any. So last fall, I just cut them right down to the ground because I'd read that can work for ever-bearing raspberries where you have a short growing season, kind of a avant-garde technique for pruning them. We'll see how it goes. If it doesn't go, I'm going to get rid of these and get a different variety. I love raspberries, and it's just killing me having all these raspberry plants that are growing really well, but because they're ever-bearing, I don't have the right season for ever-bearing raspberries here where I am. Just don't have the right conditions. We'll see. This blackberry right here, these were moved in the spring, so the plants sort of, I'm not expecting much from these because they got interrupted and messed up. But maybe next year. Over here I got all these broccolini, and we got some cauliflower happening here, just about ready to be picked actually. Got squash down here, coming along great. Got some, the squash is starting to form some nice squash, right? I think this one's called Sweet Mama. I had to try it. With a name like that, it's got to be good. Sweet Mama, yeah, so I got some, I love winter squash. I mean, it's one of my favorite things to grow. If I had to, make a list of 10 things that I grew, winter squash should be on the list for sure. That'd be a good video, wouldn't it? Here's the tomatoes that I direct seeded, right? So these were not transplant tomatoes, these were just direct seeded under a plastic dome in May. And they're bush varieties, so they don't get, they don't grow high. They get short and fat. And we got, we got tomatoes, right? I think these are Bobcat. That's the variety. But some of them are like a Roma type tomato, like a plum tomato, and some of them are Bobcat, which is a variant of a beefsteak, right? I like that style. I like them for making. I love my tomato sandwiches with homemade mayonnaise. Beets, more beets. I have 2 beds of beets. These are just about, I don't know, they're still growing, so I'm not harvesting them yet, but yeah, I'm a big fan of beets. Two beds of beets is the right amount for me. Another garlic bed. Started harvesting it, as you can see this morning. Got to finish that up today. This looks like beets, but it's Swiss chard. Just a different kind of red Swiss chard. I've had problems with some of them bolting this year, like this one here, right? That happens, right? So, when one bolts, you just pull it out. That's all you can do. But most of them are not bolting. But I tried a different variety, this red variety. Normally I grow Lucillus and giant Ford hook. This year I tried this red variety. I like it. I mean, it's nothing special. And look, even though I bought that red variety, I still had whatever this is. Looks like giant Ford hook to me. So yeah, I got that. Got a kind of snake over there. Weedy bean garden here. Some more potatoes here. More squash here. I can't remember what variety these were. I think they're Georgia Candy Roaster. I like that variety. It tastes really good. Didn't store that great, but oh well. And collard greens here. That bed over there was garlic, and now it's just become this weedy nightmare. People are asking me about the potatoes that I planted outside the garden. These have not done well at all. I was supposed to put another layer of mulch over this, and I didn't. So I made that video. I think I said, turning weeds into potatoes, something like that. So I mean, the potatoes are growing, but the amount of mulch I had on here was not enough. And I meant to put another good layer, like another 4 inches on, and I didn't. So probably not going to be not the ability to smother out the weeds that's needed, and not the ideal conditions for potatoes. I'll still get some potatoes out of it. You can see them growing, but definitely nothing to write home about. Yeah, so that's where we are this time of year, and you know, this is just about my busiest time of the year in the garden, really. Not in terms of gardening, not really doing anything in terms of weeding, watering, you know, working the soil. I'm not doing any of that. It's just a matter of dealing with everything that's coming out of the garden, trying to harvest everything at the right time, just make the best use of everything that I've planted so that I can, you know, keep up with the garden. And I mean, you achieve that by adjusting your diet to the garden and just focusing your, you know, setting your rhythm of life around the garden. But yeah, you know, I'm not busy maintaining the garden, I'm busy using everything that's coming out of it. Blanching and freezing the various kinds of greens and beans and things like that. Preserving pickles, making relish out of my zucchini, things like that. And of course, there's other things you can just leave in the ground, like the potatoes and the squash are still developing and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's been a fantastic growing season so far. And I'm glad you've been with me for all of that. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. Don't forget to click the bell so you know when I drop a new video. And until next time, get out there, get at it. Have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching.